Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Adam Sanchez, and here we have also Stephanie Kraft. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi. Hi.
Welcome to our channel, Enlightened Connections. And today we're going to be doing a video entitled, Why Never Trump? And so just to clarify, the intention for this video is to create a dialogue and to bridge connections across the country that have been challenged since Trump's election. So, Stephanie, why don't you lead us off with a little bit of your story on your relationship to this president and what that looks like?
Okay. So I'm just going to go back to like how I used to be and how I am leading up to like how I am nowadays. But I have never been really much into politics. I used to ignore politics. I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't interested in it. It wasn't my thing. And I always considered myself a Democrat, not knowing what a Democrat was, but I really wasn't awakened to politics or what anything meant. But I felt like I'm like those people that I knew were Democrats, like liberal, open, wanting just equality and good things for people, equal rights. I just kind of had a notion that like Democrats were good and I'm good and I want everybody to be like happy. I honestly, it shows how much I didn't know about politics. I didn't know what a Democrat was. And I didn't know what a Republican was, but I was just following along with the crowd that I felt like I belonged in. So I would say I was a Democrat, kind of, but never really associated myself that way. But anyway, I voted for Bill Clinton, and then I voted for Obama the first time. And when he won, I literally cried from the depths of my soul because I was so happy that we had, our first African-American president. I thought that this was a major turning point for this country. I literally was sobbing with happiness from the depths of my soul. And so I was deceived because he turned out not to do not good things for the country and for the world. And it was during his first term that I really started to see the damage that was being done, the horrors, the crimes against humanity that he was committing. So fast forward to this last election, I really wasn't paying attention to anything, and very last minute did start to pay attention in the summer of 2016. And again, I'm going to just expose my ignorance about politics. I didn't really know what a Democrat or a Republican was. That's how disinterested I have been my entire life in politics. Didn't really follow it other than I had been studying the corruption, doing a lot of research from as early as in the early 2000s. So when I say I'm not interested in politics, I don't follow that, but I was doing research on like the Illuminati and all the infiltration into our society and in government was involved in that. So I was more on like the truther side, doing a lot of deep research and investigations online with videos and articles. So I still wasn't like awake enough to see. I thought Obama was good, like he was going to help turn it around. It was finally going to be a turning point. And then when he was president, again, I was learning more about the deep state. Didn't even know that term back then, but it was like the cabal or the Illuminati or the New World Order, all these things that were the words that were being tossed around. And so I was very turned off by politics, very unhappy with the way American politics were going. I just saw total corruption across the board, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And because I didn't want to participate with corruption, I didn't vote in the last election. And I only started paying attention to who was even running like I said, in the summer of 2016. And at that point, I thought it was total insanity that we had both Hillary and Trump running, because that seemed like a joke to me. And I actually had so much disdain for Trump, and he was so grating. His voice, his personality, everything about him was so grating to my being that anytime I heard his voice, I would have to quickly turn it off. Or anytime I would see him, I would have to quickly turn away, because I disliked him so strongly. And same with Hillary, though. Same with her. So I already knew she was evil, and like that was not going to be an option for our world unless we wanted, total devastation of everything on the planet. But I didn't want Trump either. I didn't like him. But then later on, in probably still late summer, fall of 2016, I'm not sure when, but late summer, early fall, I listened to one of his speeches, and I was very surprised by what he was saying. He was talking about wanting to eradicate the corruption and what has taken over our country. He didn't use too many specific words. He used enough words for me to get that he knew what was going on really behind the scenes, and that his intention was for the people. And we can always question the words of anybody running, because we know that they'll say anything to get elected and have the people believe in them. And so, but there was something about when I listened to him, and I don't know if it was just one speech, it's all very vague to me, but I do remember listening and thinking, wait a second, there's something different here. And, maybe he changed, because I'm not sure why I couldn't stand to hear his voice or see him, and I had to turn it off right away anytime. I don't know why all of a sudden I could listen to him speak and I wasn't irritated. So I don't, this is getting a little bit like spiritual, but which I don't think, you and I had the intention of going that route in this conversation, but just a little side note about that. I had friends call me up, and I don't know if this was closer to when he was elected or when he was running, but this is just a little side note. I had friends who were like in a meditation, and they, I think, spontaneously saw Trump's higher self embody in his body. They saw like an angelic presence come in, and they would call me and say, oh my God, Stephanie, this thing just happened, and this is what I saw, and this light being filled him up. And he's like getting some kind of spiritual support. And I just thought that was amazing, and it kept happening. It happened more than once, and then I started reading blogs of people also having similar visions or experiences of him. So I thought it was interesting, my experience, when I couldn't stand him, couldn't listen to him, and then somehow I was able to. And that's why I say maybe something in him changed. So that's a little spiritual side note. Not everybody's going to buy into that or be comfortable with that. And that's fine. It's just something that happened in my reality. Not that I saw it, but I did. At that point, that time frame, I was able to start listening to him. And that's when I realized that he did want to do good things for the country and for the world. I think that's it, but we're going to get more deeply into all of this. But do you want to say anything about that or share your experience?
Sure. Yeah. There was something you had said that made me think about Q, and we're going to talk about Q as it's related to Trump. And there was, I forget what it was, something about Oh, well,
It'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So allow me to share a little bit of my own experience regarding this, this person in question, because I honestly felt very much like you. I was flabbergasted that these were the choices we were presented with: Hillary Clinton and Trump. And so, interestingly enough, I have actually been engaged in politics for quite some time, since Obama was running, at least probably a little bit before. Even actually when George W. Bush was president, I started to get into politics a little bit more because I was so infuriated that such a man could become president. And then, of course, we know about Fahrenheit 9/11 and the Bushes being Nazi family related, and the 9/11, inside job, all of that stuff, right? And I knew that fairly shortly after the event. So I already had, as I saw it, a personal stake in the conversation in the political arena and understanding what's really going on, despite what's being told to us. So I started paying attention back then. Now, when Obama was running for his first term, and it was the Democratic nomination, it was him versus Hillary. And I actually remember thinking to myself at that time, I started getting into it. So I was watching debates, and I would see Hillary debating Obama. And I actually, at the time, believe it or not, was a Hillary supporter, because I thought that, it was time for the feminine to have more of a place in society. I also didn't trust Obama at all. I mean, he was a very skilled orator to the point of, having a silver tongue, which is actually very dubious, because one thing I did notice about him in those debates is that he would never answer a direct question. They would ask him direct question: what's your policy on this? What's your policy on that? And with his silver tongue, he would just tap dance around the question. And you're like, ooh, pretty. Wait, what were we talking about again? Like, it's like, made no sense at all. So of course I didn't trust him. So the two choices, I'm like, well, okay, I trust Hillary more than I trust him. And I didn't know anything about Hillary Clinton really at the time. So I also want to point out that after he was elected, I was happy. I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote at the time. I saw.
Okay.
Are we okay? Sorry, my phone just did a little thing there.
Now we're good.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I didn't really know anything about him, but I was happy that a black man was president. Basically, that's really what it came down to. I knew I didn't trust him, but I was really grateful that, just like you, there seemed to be a change, a palpable change, a noticeable change, where we could say, oh, well, this might be symbolic of something deeper going on. And so I was hoping for that, like a lot of people I think were. But I had done enough research on my own up until that point to understand that I was going to continue to do research and continue to peel back the veil and see what was really going on. So I followed his presidency pretty closely. And throughout, I was on Facebook sharing things through social media. And I would always talk about his accomplishments and praise him, and talk about the things that I didn't agree with that I thought were disastrous, like the TPP, for example, the drone bombing, and, what was the other one? The Keystone Pipeline. And these are just some examples. The National Defense Authorization Act. It goes on. And whenever those things would happen, guaranteed I was posting them to Facebook and expressing my concern and my upset and, the injustice of it all. And I would also, whenever he would do something that I agreed with, or he'd give a speech that was apparently very heartfelt and what I thought was something that the American people in the world needed to hear, guarantee you I was going to be sharing that on social media and talking about the benefits of this conversation, and bringing this point of order to the global community and things like this. So I was never polarized, even with Obama, despite the fact that I have a lot of personal objections to his presidency and a lot of the things that he did. But I was able to see both sides, or at least I try my best to always see both sides, because I think that's actually where you're going to find the integration of the truth. If you're looking at things from just one side, chances are you're going to be blinded, right? So I want to point that out, because I don't think that we have to polarize people in our lives, in the world stage in general. Usually people are not just one thing. And I think that's really important to point out. People are multifaceted things. You can have people who have a lot of really great qualities, and those are authentic qualities, and they have a lot of really crappy qualities that are not good qualities, and they can coexist in the same person. It happens all the time, But we as humans, and so comfortable with our judgments and our, this is this and that is that, we want to have expectations and accountability, so we can feel safe in our world, it's often easier to just put someone in a box and say, oh, well, you're this thing. So now I know how to deal with you. I don't have to engage with you. I don't have to interact with you. I don't have to confront my own judgments and things that may not be true. So I just want to point out that that's a big pitfall that it's really, really beneficial to avoid, because it's mostly not true. It's mostly just inaccurate when we do those things.
Yeah.
And so with my relationship to Trump, first and foremost, I do not consider him an idol. I want that to be utterly clear. I don't think he's some kind of grand savior, and I do believe it's possible that he's actually working for the people. I do believe that there are things that he's doing that are really incredible. And as I started to study more and do more of my own inquiries and research. So for example, the night of the election when he won, I was stunned. I was honestly relieved because I had promised myself if Hillary won, I was going to leave the country. So at least I didn't have to move. But I also didn't know what to expect because of everything that I had seen from him on the news and, everything that I've been hearing about. So I was a little bit concerned, to say the least, right? And just like trepidatious. I'm like, what is this future going to hold? I was also especially concerned because the community was concerned. We as a collective in America, everyone seemed to be really upset by this, and that made me concerned. So, I didn't have a very strong personal feeling about him. Personally, I didn't resonate with a lot of the stuff that was being said about him, that he was racist or xenophobic or, misogynistic. And not to say that I totally understand how people could see that and how people interpreted what he said in that line. And I personally didn't feel that need to come to those conclusions or have that resonance to make that assumption. I just didn't feel that way. So I was kind of in this no man's land of not really sure how to relate to this person, but definitely feeling this sort of collective like gasp and also fury in association with him. So I started to also disassociate myself with the whole conversation. I didn't want to, be the odd man out again because I had done it in Obama. And I also want to point out one of the reasons why I brought up that Obama story, because when I would talk about my perception of what were his strengths or accomplishments, every time, I guarantee you, there'd be someone on my Facebook feed talking about, oh, well, he's this, that, and the other thing. And if they were founded and logical and rational, of course, I was able to agree and identify and say, yes, I've heard about the TPP, or I agree with you, I don't agree with this. And I think it's important to acknowledge the strengths, So I would have those conversations. But very often people didn't even want to hear the positive things. They just wanted to focus on the negative. And to be honest, if we're going to be frank about this, I believe, or from my understanding of the way those conversations went, a lot of that was due to the very, very present and subversive racism in our country. A lot of people didn't like Obama because of the color of his skin, and that was it. They weren't even aware of his politics or the things that he was doing. They simply just did not like the way he looked, and that threatened their own sense of comfort. And I would get a lot of that from people whenever I would praise him on Facebook. So I just want to point that out because it's interesting and opposite to what I think we have now, because there's a lot of polarization and demonization that's happening, and kind of it's reversed the script a little bit. And so I'll save that for my next talking point. I want to give you a chance here to share, comment anything about any of that.
Yeah, you talked about, once someone has a stance on something or they voted for someone, everybody wants to put that person in a box and there's no more discussion about it. Now I know everything I need to know about you. You're like that. And and now I'm against you because I don't agree with whatever my preconceived notions about that are. And that's why Adam and I are making this video, because we want to open this discussion up, because what's not happening in this country are open, calm, sane, balanced, rational conversations, because we know that it's not an easy thing to say anything supportive about anything that Trump is doing, because if anybody does, we're seen as monsters and we are attacked. And, you know, there are people who are afraid to wear a Trump shirt or hat, you know, baseball cap or whatever out in public because they would face physical violence. And this is a reality that we're living in. And so people are putting other people into boxes. And this is something that I don't understand. And like I said, I was very naive about politics. I didn't know what a Democrat or a Republican was. I was just following the crowd to the point, and like even though I voted for Obama the first time, I very quickly, you know, didn't continue to pay attention to politics because I wasn't really into it. I just wanted an African-American president because like I said, I thought this was a change for the country in a good way. And, you know, because I felt like, well, if this can happen, well, then so many other good things can happen, you know. I was very idealistic. So I'm just, you know, so my point is that I still wasn't awake to everything political, but when I started paying attention in 2016, I started seeing people attacking each other and being in these boxes of Republican and Democrat more than I had ever seen before. I didn't really know it was such a thing. I really wasn't paying attention much in my life to know that it was such a thing, that they are so divided, and there are the right wing and the left wing, and they view each other as enemies. So I'll admit it, I actually went online to read what is a Democrat, what is a Republican, because I didn't know really what they stood for, really why there was such fighting and why people were putting themselves into a box. And I looked that up probably in 2016 or 17, because I was just like, wow, there's this thing, because my consciousness is way different than that. Like what I see are issues, standalone issues that we all have different opinions about. And that can't be put into any box. That can only be, I have 100 different opinions about something and you have 100 different opinions about something. How can any of that fit into any box? That's just doesn't make sense to me. So the point I'm making is that my consciousness can't even fit into that type of thinking. And so, but I'm witnessing it with other people. And what is weird to me, because I don't think this way, is that if I express any kind of positivity about anything Trump is doing, it's assumed that I'm right wing or I'm Republican or something like, and I'm like, I don't even like, okay, I can't think that way. I don't even understand that. And Trump's not even a Republican. He's just ran as a Republican. And so we're talking about this is that this is, any support for Trump is really about what the actions are, like the things that we're seeing him do that are in support of humans. So this is not about Republican or Democrat. This is about humanity. And so we have to get a little bit more clear about what we're talking about here, because we're being vague about actions. Because a lot of what is, well, almost everything that's presented in the media is claiming that he's doing bad things. So how could we support anything he's doing? But Adam and I are not followers of mainstream media and tend to go very deeply into research and find out what's really going on behind the scenes. And we have learned like you said, you've been studying this stuff for many, many years, and so have I. And I woke up also to 9/11 a little bit after, not right away, not when it happened, but in the I don't know if it was 2002 or 2003, but very early on afterwards. So the point is that we understand that there is a, let's say, a 1% elite cabal group of people on the planet who have infiltrated government, religion, the healthcare system, school system, medicine. I guess I just said that. Big pharma, the food industry, anything, every aspect of human life has been negatively affected by this group, and they do run the politics of the world. So presidents are selected, not elected. And, I feel that, so there's a group of people that are in the military and they're in politics. And what happens is that a lot of these people are corrupted because they're blackmailed and bribed. So sometimes it's not their choice to work for the dark side, but they don't want their family to be murdered. So they're pushed into some really nefarious activity. Now, within government, within the military, there are also people who are good and want the best for humanity. They're called the white hats. And what we have found out is that these individuals from various sectors, of course, we don't know this is speculation, but have made up a group called Q. Nobody knows who Q is. Q Anon. This is something that started on either 4chan or 8chan, one of these boards, and anonymous boards, and has been putting out clues. So clues and questions about what is happening in almost real time, predicting things, and then causing the population, whoever wants to research. So they'll put out clues and questions, and then it helps people dig deeper. And so these are, whoever Q is some kind of military intelligence, probably. And when you start to pay attention to this information and then you see it happening, it's proven, because you see it happens in real life. Whatever Q talked about, predicted, mentioned, then like about the next day or so happens. So that we know that there's insider information coming through. And so I feel like I'm not really getting to the point, but maybe you can help me, Adam. I feel like you can help me.
Sure. Yeah, that's okay. It's quite the labyrinth of a topic,
Yeah.
Because we're talking about all these subversive things and, secrecy and manipulation and deceit and all of this stuff. And then, of course, spy organizations, none of this stuff is really very overt. It's actually exactly the opposite. So there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack on the subject. But I think it's really important. I want to get to, within the Q conversation, and looking about the positives that we're actually, that would make us be able to be called a Trump supporter. I don't personally like that term because it makes me sound like I'm some kind of lackey or stooge, or that I'm just, blind follower, idolatry, or any sort of those things. And I don't have any illusions about who this man is. I don't think that he's a perfect savior of any kind. I think he's human, that he's flawed just like the rest of us, if not maybe in some more ways, and also that he is doing good. And so I want to focus a little bit on that good, because that, I think, will get us into this conversation about what's going on behind the scenes, because there are a couple of things that are in front of the scenes that are actually very obvious, but that almost no one is talking about, because he's been so vilified and so marginalized as far as the collective is concerned. I actually have dear friends of mine who are very intelligent, but who say things, honestly, that are very ignorant in the literal sense of the word, meaning they're actually ignoring information. and they don't even listen to what he has to say. They never listen to any of his speeches. They don't know anything that he's ever said except for the sound bites that they get from the media. And so obviously this is going to make a skewed perception. You know, if you're following the news at all, you can pick up on those skewed perceptions. But a great vivid example is how he just helped to create peace in North Korea. And it's like crickets. It's like, where's the gratitude? Where's the happiness? Where's the celebration? People don't even have to be grateful to him. They could just celebrate peace. But generally, they're so much more invested in the idea of him as some kind of evil overlord that they can't provide any sort of celebration or gratitude or any acknowledgement even of the positive nature of that thing. Even if it is in itself just absolutely positive, there's so much of that emotional investment of the image that they can't even, you know, express that, or, you know, they don't want to. Or people who do see it and do want to express that, then, you know, they're shut down and vilified by their loved ones in their community, because those people assume that this person is a xenophobe, a racist, a sexist, and all these other things that they associate with Trump. So that's one example of the positive things that are happening that, you know, very few people are connecting with or looking at. And one of the biggest ones, which really brings us to the point of this video, you know, Stephanie and I also did another video about this topic, processing the truth when nothing makes sense. He did create an executive order and declared a state of emergency. I believe it was in January. Is that when it was? Somewhere recently. Yeah, he declared a state of emergency on human trafficking and human rights violations and crimes against humanity. So this is something that, of course, the mainstream media did not report on because they are complicit and they're trying to protect the people who are actually generating the system because it's a part and parcel to the same system. So of course, they're not going to tell on themselves. They're going to try and marginalize that information, call it fake news, you know, so that people don't pay attention to it. Because if you paid just a little bit of attention to it, you'd be able to follow the story and connect the dots and see, wow, this is actually happening. There have been more arrests under Trump for human trafficking than Obama ever did, you know, in just this past year. I mean, I don't remember all the numbers, but they're very significant. And additionally, you know, we have, how many now is it?
40,
like upwards of
40,500.
I thought it was up to 50,000, but let's say somewhere between 40. Yeah, I had read something. Don't quote me.
This morning it was 40,500, but who knows what.
Okay, so let's go with yours, because I think mine was a little bit later, and I don't know where I heard that 50,000 from. But let's say at least 40,000 sealed indictments of people within our government, within corporations, within our country, and beyond, who have enough evidence to be convicted for crimes against humanity. And I was just told, and I don't know if this is true, so don't quote me on this, but for those sealed indictments to be possible, there has to be a mountain of evidence against the people in question. So it's not just speculation. This is like mounds and mounds of evidence to put these people in these circumstances. And of course, there's no mention of this in the media. Enter Q, right? Because Q is actually a source of journalism, as we can see, you know, to the best of our ability to discern this, because of what you just said, Stephanie. The clues will be given, information will be given beforehand, and then you'll see, you know, not in a sort of predictive programming sort of way, or maybe it is, you might be able to call it predictive programming, but the agenda is different. The agenda is not one to disempower and alienate and create more dependency on the system. The intention is actually the opposite, to create more liberation, more freedom, more sovereignty from that system. And that's where Q comes in. Q is providing this information to awaken the people to the truth going on behind the media, the things that are not being reported on, so that people can discover the truth for themselves. Because we have been so spoon-fed a lie for so long that it does require some engagement, some deprogramming, some self-questioning. I think that's why the Q letter is paramount, because it's like question, you know, question what you've been told, question what you think is true, question the truth, question the lie, question and find the answer, and maybe find the truth. So those are some examples of the great work that is being done. And I think Hollywood is also an illustration of that, with the, you know, accountability that's being brought to light between, you know, these sex criminals and, you know, rapists and pedophiles. All of those things are being brought to light now directly because of the work that Trump has been doing to support this process. So this is huge. Whether or not you agree with all of his politics, I don't. I know he's been doing things. I could go into a list that I don't agree with. But this is enough for me to say, yes, I support this. This is huge. It can actually make a really far-reaching benefit for our country and humanity to address these very serious issues. And it is important enough for us to do this video, to have these challenging conversations, to bridge the gap and say, hey, it's actually multifaceted. You know, let's try not to put each other in boxes and listen to the conversation. I can understand where people would be afraid or concerned. I have those concerns too. And I'm more grateful than concerned to see the benefits, to see the good that is happening. And it's really important, I think, to look at both sides, and then especially take the good when you can get it, because it can be challenging to find that blessing in the midst of all this chaos. So
yeah, have the humility. Yeah, have the humility to be able to say, well, I can't stand the guy, but actually peace in North Korea sounds pretty good. Or I can't stand the guy, but the fact that he's arrested, or under his administration, there have been more arrests for trafficking, human trafficking, than 8 years of Obama. So I think that we can't really get our points across, some of our points across about the good things that he's doing, unless people really understand what's going on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I talked about it a little bit before about people being bribed, bribery and blackmail happening within Congress, within CIA, FBI, the UN, everything, everywhere. There's nothing untouched by this. And so what am I talking about? I'm talking about that there's a worldwide currency that is children. So I don't want to go too in depth, but we have wars that are created, particularly in the Middle East, which causes massive refugees into countries. And this is displacement of people. And so it's very easy to get children under those circumstances, crossing borders, refugee crises. So there's organ trafficking, weapon trafficking, and child trafficking, and other human trafficking. But these are the biggest money makers on the planet. Child trafficking is a $150 billion industry. So I'm just going to give a concrete example that people can relate to. Not that anybody can relate to any of this, because we're not psychopaths, but let's talk about the border for a second. If you've done enough research, you know that the border issue has nothing to do with immigration. This country is awesome with immigrants, and so everyone knows that the country is better with immigrants, and that it's not even a question. And so it's made out to be, the left-wing corporate media makes it out to be that, to make Trump seem like the bad guy or whoever is the president at the time. But the fact is that what is crossing the border, the children that cross the border are usually trafficked. And the reason of separating adults and children is to save the children from traffickers. Sometimes they'll use a child to cross the border, or that child, in any case, has been abducted. In most of the case, there are a lot of people who are leaving their countries in Latin America, are looking for a better life, and they need money to send back home to feed their family. And they're not going to bring their child with them on that long trip. A lot of times they're walking for months at a time. I know a lot of this because I used to teach English as a foreign language to immigrants for 7 years in the Washington, D.C. area. And these were illegal immigrants who were my students. And so I would have them do writing assignments, and they would share their very deeply personal stories about how they came to the United States. And, you know, I don't think I ever heard of anybody doing this, you know, traveling by foot and paying. They have to pay. They have these people who help them do the trip from whatever country they are in, and help them travel illegally through. Like, they know what they're doing, and a lot of the border patrol, you know, let them and have whatever that. But so the point is, like, I don't think that these people are bringing their children because they wouldn't put their child through that. What they're doing is they're leaving their family to come here to work, to send money back home for the kids, to keep them safe. Now, this is not 100% of the cases. I can't speak to that. I can only speak to, you know, some of my experiences that I've heard about, and some of what I think, you know, my speculation through research, through what I'm seeing. But what I'm seeing is that the border issue is about what Trump is trying to do is end trafficking. So because he signed the executive order, and right away when he took office, he signed he signed something to end trafficking. That was right away when he was elected. I don't remember exactly, a task force or something to limit trafficking, end trafficking. Then he signed another executive order to freeze the assets of all persons involved in trafficking. And then he signed the executive order that you mentioned to whatever that one was that you mentioned. And so when we look at the border issue, we can see that it's still in alignment with what he's been working on. And so this is a global issue. And when I say children are currency, I am not exaggerating. This is how people are bribed. I mean, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, just get a little tidbit. Like, let's say there's a congressman, and they're invited into a hotel room, told that it's going to be a woman, you know, and they go in there. Well, they videotape and things, and it's not a woman, it's a child, and then they have it on video. So these people are forced into this. And so you know, you might not know about this, but if you research it, you find out, and it's horrific, and it's worldwide. And so when Adam and I say we can see the good things that he's doing and the 40,000 sealed indictments, we understand what that's about. It is about exactly what I'm talking about. And there have already been, I don't know if it's 2 or 3 unsealed indictments and arrests. So yes, we have a long way to go to see the rest of them, but we can already see the one that just happened last week. Joel Davis is his name. And I did not read his unsealed indictment, but I read comments from people who did, and they vomited. Some people said that it made them vomit, and a lot of other strong reactions, that it's extremely graphic, and I'm not going to mention details, and I wouldn't read it, and I don't recommend that anybody read it. But when you just know, and this is public, this is on a .gov, you know, this is a government document that you can read his unsealed indictment. It's many pages long. The point is that these sealed indictments are going to become unsealed. As each one goes to court and these people are arrested, you can actually read what's going on. So when you don't know what's going on and you hear people like us saying that he's doing good things and you can't actually see it, it's because it's not in the news and it's not being talked about. publicly, but those of us who know, everyone, every single Q supporter and Trump supporter knows what I'm talking about. And so that's why people support Trump. I don't even call myself a Trump supporter. I've never said those two words together, or those three words together, for I'm a Trump supporter. Never said those words before in my life, because I don't really consider myself a Trump supporter. But I do support what he's doing. He's not perfect. Let's look at that. Like, his personality is a bit abrasive, but let's be honest. We need that kind of personality to take down the criminals. And what other kind of personality would that take? Who would be willing to do what he puts up with? He doesn't take the salary, the presidential salary. He's ridiculed by the media, not just every day, but all day, every day. And he's doing a selfless service, literally, to save humanity from these evil psychopaths. And so when you really understand what's going on, you can understand people like me who literally want the, humanity to be saved, and especially the children. And so I think that kind of explains a bit about why someone would even support him and what he's doing. And people question, like, that, what is it? And it's because they don't know. They don't understand the deeper issues that are going on. And it's hard to explain it to people, because once you open your mouth and you type something about this, they think it's a conspiracy theory. They don't believe it. Pedogate, Pizzagate, they say it's been debunked. No,
it hasn't.
This is
never, not by anyone. It has to be investigated first to be debunked.
No,
it was never even investigated. It was squashed from the beginning.
It's not going to come out in the media. Now, it might in the future when the media is free. We don't have free media. It's controlled, it's policed, they are complicit. You, whoever's watching this, are going to start to see people, starting this month, July 2018, be arrested. The entire fabric of our entire country and world is going to change, and it is because these people are being taken out of power. Anything else? I'm going to step off.
Let's do a little hallelujah dance for that one. Celebrate.
Celebrate. It is time to celebrate. Yeah.
Yes, and peace is not necessarily a short or easy road, right? Considering where we've been in the past eons, but we can celebrate along the path and, take a couple dance steps here and there. I also want to talk about, I mentioned it before, this whole element of polarization and demonization, and you were talking about, these are some of the things that can explain why someone would support Trump, right? It's not a never Trump in this situation. It's like, well, actually in this case, okay. So that's moving beyond the polarization, because the polarization is basically just like, you could say it's a projection, but it's putting someone on one end of the spectrum. So it's the opposite of what I was talking about before, saying that people can be different things. People can be more than one thing. Well, the polarization actually says the opposite. The polarization says, oh, this person is completely an asshole, excuse my French, but that judgment, it's a function of the ego. When we have judgments like that, we're actually not open to reality. We're imposing our own perception of reality onto reality, and we're not actually able to connect with the truth of it. So imagine what that would look like in our relationships. It's like there's that age-old saying, would you rather be happy in your relationships, or would you rather be right? It's like you can hold on to the sense of righteousness in your relationship and judge the other person for this perceived flaws, but it does nothing for the connection that you have with that person. It does nothing for the communication and understanding and the affinity. And so if we want to actually have a peaceful, successful society, then it behooves us to have civil, rational discussions with people and avoid the tendencies towards polarizations and putting these things in just black and white, or it's like Trump or Hillary, black or white, red or blue, elephant or donkey. Really? There's only two choices in this whole world? Not exactly. So polarization is a function of duality, and it's what you see in the media and this conversation of pitting people against each other, one side versus the other side, polarizing so that there is no unity. Because if we understand that there is a unity, we can actually work together. And Stephanie, you had mentioned this earlier when we were talking about this subject, that when it comes down to it, on a fundamental level, we as humans want the same things. You know, we want safety, we want support, we want happiness, we want security, we want our lives to be full of quality and, you know, beauty and grace. You know, we might have some individual differences here and there, but generally speaking, we want the same things. So for us to just assume that this person, perceived or otherwise outside of us, is all of this way, or, you know, again, polarization and demonization. Once we polarize, it's very easy to demonize and say, oh, well, this person's the devil. I mean, I saw in quotes, literally Hitler. People are calling him literally Hitler. That makes no sense at all. First of all, literally means the actual literal definition of something. It's not figurative. That's the opposite. If you wanted to say figuratively Hitler, that would be different. But to say literally Hitler is not only false, it's obviously a form of propaganda and demonization, right? There's a huge wave of demonization around Trump and his presidency and his, you know, administration, because of the fundamental issues that he's raising in his presidency, going after these traffickers, because they don't want to be exposed, they don't want to be stopped, they want to continue with business as usual. And thankfully that's not going to happen, you know, because of people waking up to this information. So it's really important not to polarize, not to demonize. Chances are, I mean, listen, even with Hillary Clinton, I don't demonize her. I will be grateful that she awakened me to the crazy subversive corruption that's going on in politics so I could be a more responsible citizen. I don't have to demonize her. I don't have to hate her. I have no hate for her. I have no hate for anyone. It's not important enough for me to have hate for people. I want love, compassion, peace, and unity. And, you know, if people say they want those things as much as they pronounce with all this fervor in opposition to Trump, I think it would really behoove them to consider these elements of polarization and demonization. And, you know, there's something that's really important to be said about dehumanizing. And it's, first of all, you know, Stephanie, you're also talking about these, you know, secret societies. The Jesuits come to mind, right? Because the Jesuits are all throughout the history books. Even one of the popes, who was assassinated by the Jesuits, actually went into renouncing them just before his assassination. Then he was assassinated by them, slowly killed over poison over the course of like several months. They specialize in poison, and that's where the vaccines come in. That's another video, right? But these people, they're fond of eugenics. They're fond of Agenda 21 and depopulation. And, you know, the monarchs, you know, have this idea of genetic superiority. And so this idea of eugenics comes in, and the way that they are able to psychologically allow the psyche to come to such a place is to dehumanize the other people on the planet. So you have these people, the Jesuits, the royals, whatever, people who believe in eugenics are able to commit crimes against humanity, like, you know, with I forget, the Buffalo Soldiers. I know it wasn't the Buffalo. There's some, you know, the medical industry was injecting African American men with syphilis, and they were calling it, you know, some kind of study or something. So this stuff has been going on since allopathic medicine began, since even before time immemorial. But it's this idea that you can separate and stratify society and humanity and say, well, there's this group up here, and they're superior, and they're the true race or the true people. And then you have this subhuman group that is cattle, right? Herd immunity, this whole idea of human beings being animals or less than human. And it's that dehumanization that allows people to create crimes against humanity, atrocities, because they're no longer looking at the receiving end of that behavior as a human at all. They have in their mind created this separation, this dehumanization. Oh no, this person is not a human. I can treat them however I like because they're not human. And so ironically enough, dehumanizing is the thing that most never Trumpers hate the most in him. That's what they say. They hate the most in him, that he's not, no humanity. He's very selfish and hateful and misogynistic and xenophobic and all these things. Yet it's the thing they hate most in him that they themselves are doing by dismissing their own loved ones as soulless Trump-tomatons. Right? By saying, oh, I never Trump, oh, anyone who likes Trump is evil, they are actually dehumanizing them and becoming the very thing they profess to be against. And so it's very psychologically tricky, but it's really important to know that so that you are not subject to that, don't get lost or caught in that trap, because it's an ego trap. Again, externalization, polarization, vilification, creating some external demon so that you can feel better about being self-righteous in the face of that demon. And listen, that's not to say that we shouldn't stand up for things in our lives. It's very important to take a stand, to fight for things that you believe in, peacefully, I would say, stand up for things that you believe in. But it's also, I think, really important to know what's really going on so that you can choose your side very clearly. And if you're being misled, if you're being manipulated, if you're being confused and deliberately lied to, that's going to be much harder. So, maybe just look at it that way. Is it creating more unity in your life, or is it creating more division? And that might be a good barometer to see, where you are on the subject with your loved ones and your circle of people.
Yes. And on about that, people are being swayed by the media. And so, every week there's a new theme to be outrageously, enraged about. And if you just watch, like clockwork, next week there'll be a new thing. And everybody's, angry about this, but it's everyone at the same time. And then the next week, everyone at the same time is going to be outraged about this. And then, well, let's look at that. Why is that cycle happening? It's just happening because it is only what's being shown on the news. So you can actually see people being, we could call it brainwashed and swayed 100%. By what's being told to them on the mainstream media, even though everybody knows that they lie. I mean, people have to go into cognitive dissonance to start believing it again, but it happens every day. So it's like Groundhog Day, like, oh, they lied about that. Oh, wake up the next day. I forgot that they lied about that, so I'm going to believe them again today. So why are people not admitting to themselves that the media lies? I don't even have to say what they've lied about. You should be able to remember and know they lied about this, they lied about that, it wasn't true. Hillary, weapons of mass destruction, Hillary's gonna win. I could go on and on. The lies have come out, but that's not enough proof for people to stop believing the media. They still believe. So there's a patent on energy weapon or energy. It's an energy weapon, but it's magnetic. What is it? Electromagnetic impulses that come through the TV to cause mind control. And so it's not just, oh, how weird that is that this is happening. No, this is a purposeful agenda, and it's working, and you can see it. And if you are a participant in that, if you do watch TV, if you do have a TV, if you have a TV on or off, it's working. And if you find yourself being swayed by the mainstream media and groupthink, and you notice that everybody who thinks like you is thinking the same thing this week, and then the next week there's going to be a new theme, but did you remember what it was 3 weeks ago? Probably not, because you've already had 1, 2, 3 other new things to occupy the mind and fulfill that anger that you have, that you're jumping on the bandwagon along with everybody else to participate in the hate. And so, it is what you were saying. I think it's really important for people to be self-respecting reflective and introspective. Am I in a state of hate? Am I in a state of anger? Am I in a state of division and separation? Or am I coming from an open-hearted place with love, with compassion, with unity and positivity? We are all brothers and sisters. We are all one. The most important thing for us is to unite. The 1% want us divided. They are succeeding in that mission. But if you start to understand what is really happening around the world, things that Adam and I have been talking about, then you can understand that the people who see good things happening in this administration, the things, the happiness that we have, that there are 40,000 sealed indictments. Why do we care that there are 40,000 sealed indictments? This is proof to us that the criminals are being taken down. They literally are. We know this because when things happen, and because we've been researching for 10 years, 20 years, we know what needs to happen, and it hasn't been happening until Trump became president. Nothing good in terms of taking down the deep state happened until he became president. So why would I like a guy that I hated? I mean, I can say, I don't really even can say I like the guy. I support his actions. In some of his actions, I can say I don't support oil drilling, pipelines. I don't support a lot of things that are bad for the environment or bad for humanity, but I do support the things that are good for humanity. It's as simple as that. And so when you see the things that are good for humanity, it's logical. It makes logical sense that you would support those things. And so we really do need to come together a little bit more, have open discussions, be non-judgmental, hopefully non-reactive, and listen to our brothers and sisters, because we have, the majority of people have a good heart and want good things for each other. Most people are not racist. Most people are not against immigration even. I mean, I don't even know any, well, I'm sure, there are really people on the far ends of the continuum, but like most people aren't against immigration or things like that. So it's like if somebody supports stricter border control, it doesn't mean they're against immigration. I support that because I want to save the children who have been abducted. I married an immigrant, so you can't jump to conclusions about people. Anyway, all of our ancestors were immigrants anyway, so it's a stupid thing to argue about. But what was I going to say? There's so much to talk about on this topic. Do you want to say anything?
Oh, I was just going to end with a quote, so whenever you're ready for that.
Okay,
yeah,
let's
finish up.
Was there anything that I wanted to say? I mean, even just things, I want to say a couple of things really briefly, but like even when he was elected and he reduced funding or shut it down for the endowment for the arts, and people were in an uproar. But if you know what Hollywood is doing, and in terms of the same topic I'm talking about, the pedophilia, all of this stuff, you can understand where certain money is funneled, and in cutting that, you're actually restricting a lot of that activity. And if you don't understand the deeper issues, you're not going to understand why somebody would be okay, would support him in that. Or the EPA. The EPA is very corrupt and hasn't been doing their job. And so if he decreased funding, it's not that he's against the environment. Yeah, there are some other issues we can address that are not good for the environment, but we can't make blanket statements about everything. So we have to look at each issue and investigate. Why did he reduce funding? Well, let's find out what the EPA hasn't been doing. Did they clean up the water in Flint, Michigan? No. So are they doing their job? No. What are they doing with their money? So people need to research deeply, and it's not through the mainstream media. So that's it. But I want to hear this quote you have because it's excellent.
Oh, it is a really good one. And so this was inspired by a dear and brilliant Facebook friend of mine. His name is Cameron Freeman. And so he had written something on this subject that I thought was just so poignant that it inspired me to share it for this video, because it just hits the point home, I think. And so he wrote this little piece. I'm paraphrasing, quoting most of it, but I'm going to be taking out a fair amount as well for the sake of brevity. But essentially, the title is the progressive left's anti-fascist resistance to the election of Trump is a disguise that masks an unconscious lack. So he goes on, in other words, if this fascist enemy didn't exist, then the left would need to invent one. For it, at its core, the hate Trump resistance movement is driven by the narcissistic need of the progressive left to justify its pretensions to radical political activism. And early in 2016, that's precisely what happened, as the figure of Trump, with the nonstop help of the 24/7 brainwashing of liberal media, rapidly became a monstrous caricature of himself. And as a result, this media-manufactured boogeyman construction of Trump as literally Hitler, that's in quotes, secured the heroic significance of the radical left in its imaginary aspirations to fight against an archetypical evil. But if they were to withdraw their psychological projections by peeling away this anti-fascist disguise and relinquishing their compulsive demand that Trump's populist revolt be the imminent return of goose-stepping Nazi white supremacists, they'd confront their unconscious shadow and recognize that within the core of every anti-capitalist, anti-fascist, radical left-wing activist is a fascist control freak in denial. These imposters on the left are merely pretending to be radicals, anarchists, or communist revolutionaries seeking the overthrow of the established order. But what we're dealing with here are frustrated tyrants with an insatiable drive for dictatorial power and control over the beliefs and behavior of other people. Don't listen to what they say, look at what they actually do. It shows. And completing this, and while these anti-fascist leftists have a snowball's chance of knowing this, they're also being played by the real fascists. This is why I wanted to share this, right? Because I know that there's, behind the anger and the fury, there's an actual desire in a lot of these people's hearts to do good, but it's being subverted to actually distract from where people can do good. So that's why I feel it's really important to share this. So, for beneath the superficial veneer of these radical activists calling for revolution and railing against the new face of authoritarian fascism, we find sheep being led to slaughter by the ruling establishment. And it is precisely the college-educated upper-middle-class liberals and their conformity to the social consensual reality of the political and media establishment that our fascist rulers use to disguise the fundamental antagonisms and inherent failures of the existing political system. So it's the desire for these, revolutionaries, and, maybe some of them are, actually revolutionaries, but they're just a little misguided. Now knowing that we're actually all on the same side, that we don't have to agree with Trump, we don't have to even like him at all, but we can respect components of the work that he's doing and seeing the bigger picture, that actually maybe what we heard about him before wasn't true. Maybe there is something good happening. Maybe we can actually look into it, challenge ourselves, our own belief systems a little bit, look into it, and then actually be an agent of that change we so deeply want, we so deeply desire. And it's really important. There's a lot of deception out there. So it does require our discernment. It does require us doing the spiritual work, the inner work of loving ourselves, being more loving within ourselves, more compassionate to ourselves, more loving and compassionate with each other. I mean, if you're just going to keep it simple, that's all we ever really needed to say. But because it's such a complex labyrinth of psychological and psychic phenomenon, it's good that we went into details. But let's just all be more loving, more open to having conversations and dialogues versus, monologues of disgust and dismissal of the people in our lives who matter to us.
And turn off the TV.
Yes, I second that emotion. Absolutely. Yeah. Even listen, even if it's off but plugged in, it still emits that frequency. So unplug your TVs, unplug from the matrix.
Yeah,
Maybe do some meditating.
Yeah, and this is researchable. This
Oh yeah, there's a patent on that.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're not just making things up, and we're not conspiracy theorists, which is like a bad word.
We're conspiracy factualists.
Ain't that the truth? So when you distance yourself from the mainstream media, you actually dehypnotize yourself, and you can start to see truth very clearly, and you can see what a show it really is, what a facade, and you can't see it when you're immersed in it. I stopped watching TV 9 years ago, and you know, you can't compare the amount of truth resonance that you can feel and know. You know, give it a try. Give yourself like a month or 3 months detox of no TV, and see how your perceptions change, and you will be tuning in to the truth frequency that is the in alignment with your soul. So I would recommend giving it a try.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just want to finish that point to, it's really simple. If you just look at it this way, right? The news thrives on fear, thrives on it. It's how they make all their money, all their sales, and it's how they get people addicted to watch more. But really, is that something any of us need more in our lives? I don't think so.
Right.
So just putting that one there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having the courage and conviction to share this information with me in this video today. I think that hopefully this will make conversations moving forward a bit easier and a little bit more peaceful and amicable, because we really are in this together, and we can create a world that works for everyone, especially once we're on the same page, that's what we all want.
Yes, and it's important to recognize that we really do all want the same things. We might have slight variations and opinions about things, but on the big, broad topics of safety and peace and protection, we all and unity and equality, we really all do want, humanity to thrive. And please understand that we are all in this together. And yeah, maybe we can have more civil conversations with each other.
Let it be so. Yes.
All right. Well, we're on, our channel is called Enlightened Connections. Go ahead and subscribe and like and share our videos, add comments, tell us what you want us to talk about. And we will see you in another video soon. Bye, Adam.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye, Stephanie.
Good night. Bye-bye.